Broadcasting live from the Newsmax studio in New York City, here is Steve Malzberg.
Well, Steve didn't have a facelift or any other differences to his face. It's me, Rob Astorino, the Westchester County Executive, filling in for Steve, who gets a good day off today. I hope he's having fun. Well, having fun with the economy, I don't know, are you? Because there are lots of places in this country that are struggling. Certainly overall, the economy is not doing well. It plunged in the first quarter by almost 3%, the GDP. And here to talk about that and what it means to you, because sometimes with the economy, we can always get lost in the numbers, but what it really means to you and going forward, what it means for your future, is Lee Ohanian, who is a professor of economics at UCLA and a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution. And Lee joins us from Santa Barbara, California. Lee, how are you today?
Hi, Rob. Thanks for having me.
So how is the economy doing? You know, we hear different things from different people. Some states are doing well, but overall, what are the trends that you see that are really alarming to people?
Well, overall, the country is not doing well. We haven't had really any economic recovery whatsoever from the 08-09 recession. We bottomed out, but we really haven't come back at all. Employment as a share of the adult population is lower today than it was during the financial crisis. And probably the most troubling trend is that the reason that this country is so much wealthier than virtually any other country on the earth is because our productivity, our worker productivity, how much value every worker adds, is just so much higher. And our productivity growth has slipped remarkably in the last 8 to 10 years. And what I've calculated is that business sector output today is more than $1 trillion less than it should be, just on the basis of a slowdown in productivity growth. So we're really headed in the wrong direction. And if anything, that productivity trend I just mentioned is getting worse, not better.
So why? I mean, what's the answer to that? Is it just the tax structure in the United States or in various states as it is? I mean, here in New York, we're the worst. I mean, we're one of the, well, actually, we're neck and neck with you in California, but let's just say we're one of the worst 2 states in the country. We're lagging behind many other states. Some states are doing very well, like Texas and Florida, et cetera. As we sort of mentioned here in New York, that's where our population is going for the jobs. But what is the reason why, as a country, we're really facing a headwind?
Well, you know, really fundamentally what it boils down to is that we just have a much less dynamic economy today and for the last several years than we've ever had. So in particular, new economic growth comes from new businesses, you know, new startups. So the economic titans of today are Microsoft and Apple and Google and Intel. These are all companies that started in 1970 and 1980. They started small, and then they became remarkably successful. We don't have the new Apples and Microsofts today. And in fact, startups are 30% less today than they were in the 1980s.
Why?
And you mentioned, you mentioned states like, business-friendly states like Texas, states that are much friendlier to business than New York or my state of California. Startups in Texas are 35% lower than they were in the 1980s. Startups in North Dakota, with all the fracking activity, you might think that's a boomtown. Startups are lower in North Dakota. It's an economy-wide problem, and it really boils down to a tax structure that really penalizes small business and new businesses. So as you mentioned, taxes are a big part of the component. Regulation is a big part of the component. Under President Obama, the EPA and the National Labor Relations Board, in my opinion, have really gone overboard in making it difficult for businesses to hire and expand. We have a corporate tax rate that's the highest among any advanced country, at 35% nationally, which means for states like yours and mine, the corporate tax rate, which includes federal and state taxes, is up at 40%. Dodd-Frank has really impacted small business lending. There's less small business lending now than there was in 2010. Obamacare has thrown a huge blanket on small business. Small businesses don't know if they're going to be subject to Obamacare, if they won't be, if they are, when. It's really a very anti-competitive unbusiness-friendly environment that the United States finds itself in now. And and as I say, it's not getting better. If anything, it's heading in the wrong direction.
Well, here in New York, Governor Cuomo puts on a ruse, as have some other governors around the country. But here, he has what you've probably seen on your television somewhere, Startup New York ads, where the governor of New York is inviting businesses to come to New York, but unfortunately it's going about the wrong way. It's picking and choosing winners. It can only be a high tech. It can only be located on a state university campus. And if they meet all these qualifications, then maybe they get a tax break. That's not how it works, and New York is totally lagging behind the rest of the country in economic recovery. And it has some of the worst outlooks economic-wise for our cities, et cetera. You know, this is, again, where businesses are trying to pick states which are going to be welcoming them. But are you saying the dreamers and the entrepreneurs are going to have a real hard time?
The dreamers and entrepreneurs are going to have a real hard time. Federal law, federal regulations, state law, state taxes, state regulations are making it more difficult and more costly to start a business. There are people there who are on the sidelines that I think have ideas and would like to enter. And it's prohibitive. It's hard to get financing. It's expensive to get financing. It's expensive to hop all the hurdles one needs to hop in order to start a new business and successfully get it off the ground. And perhaps even more important, we make it hard for people with ideas to come here and start them. So, for example, half of all high-tech successful startups are done by immigrants. Mm-hmm. Yet we make it very difficult for the most talented immigrants to stay in the United States. A lot of them come here to go to graduate school. In fact, in Silicon Valley alone, this is how bad it is. So many skilled, high advanced degree entrepreneurs want to come to this country and start a business. They can't get a visa, so what they're going to do is they're going to live on a cruise ship that's stationed 12 miles off of San Francisco, right where international waters start. They're going to get in a boat and take that boat into San Francisco harbor and then go into Silicon Valley for a couple weeks, and then they're going to go back out to the ship when they have to. I mean, it's nuts how difficult we make it for people with ideas to start new businesses.
Lee, you're right, and unfortunately the problem has become government on all levels has become the enemy of productivity, has become the enemy of the entrepreneur and established businesses, nickel and diming people on rates, on taxes, on regulations, but also hitting them over the head with major ones like corporate taxes, individual taxes, et cetera. Thanks for joining us, Lee. I appreciate it very, very much. Don't go away. There's no other channel you should be switching to, because there's more of the Steve Malzberg Show coming up right after this break.